In this video, we will be discussing octal numbers and how we can convert octal numbers into decimal numbers. So just to review, our number system is the decimal number system, and it is a base 10 system, which means 10 to the power of 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0 are what create the values for each digit space. So we have the ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, and 10,000 spot, and so on. And they allow us to have 10 possibilities for each number. So all of the digits 0 through 9 total to a total of 10 possible numbers that can go in each digit slot. We then took a look at binary numbers, which are base 2. So that means each slot is a power of 2. So this is 2 to the power of 0, which is 1, 2 to the power of 1, which is 2, 2 to the power of 2, which is 4, 2 to the power of 3, which is 8, 2 to the power of 4, which is 16, and then we can keep going with all of the powers of 2. Now, because it is base 2, you only need 2 numbers. There's only 2 digit options for each slot. That is 0 and 1. And what we're going to look at today is something called the octal number system. So these are all base 8. So they're very similar to the decimal and binary number systems, but this time we're looking at 8 to the power of 0, which is 1, 8 to the power of 1, which is 8, 8 to the power of 2, which is 64, 8 to the power of 3, which is 512, 8 to the power of 4, which is 496, and then you can keep going with 8 to the power of 5, 8 to the power of 6, so on and so forth. So when we're dealing with octal numbers, each space is worth base 8. Now, the other interesting thing is that each number is a digit 0 through 7, and we're 0 through 7 because we need 8 possibilities. So whereas binary, we needed 2 possibilities, so that was 0 and 1. Now we need 8 possibilities for an octal number system. So we have 0 and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 5, 6 and 7, and that gets me to a total of 8 possibilities. So notice base 8, 8 possibilities, and each slot is worth a power of 8. So converting octal numbers is very similar to converting decimal numbers. You can see here I have my powers of 8 kind of sketched out on the side so I can remember what they are. Each slot is still worth, 8 to the power of 0. So this slot is worth 1. This slot is worth 8. This slot is worth 64. This slot is worth 512. So we're still using the powers of 8. The only difference here when comparing octal numbers to how we convert the binary numbers into decimal is now we use more than just 0 or 1. So it's more than just, we have the 2 to the power of 4 or we don't. We have 2 to the power of 2 or we don't. We now have numbers beyond 0 and 1 in these slots. So essentially what this is saying is I have 4 512s. I have 6 64s. I have 5 8s. And I have 3 1s. So we use our powers of 8 to figure out what each slot is worth, and then that slot is telling us how many of that number we have. So in order to convert this octal number, we would take 4 and multiply it by the 5 to the power of 12, because that slot represents 8 to the power of 3. We then have 6 times 64, because we have 6 64s, since that's 8 to the power of 2, and that's what that slot represents. I then have 5 8s, because that's 8 to the power of 1. And then I have 3 1s, because that is 8 to the power of 0. So what I'm going to need to do is figure out the value that each slot is really representing. So 4 times 5, 12, gives me 2048. 6 times 64 gives me 384. 5 times 8 gives me 40, and 3 times 1 gives me 3. And then if I add all of these together, so I have 2048, 384, 40, and 3, I get a decimal number of 2,475 base 10. So we can take our octal numbers, utilize our powers of 8, and we can convert them into decimal numbers fairly easily just by knowing what each slot is worth and then knowing how many we have within that slot. So what I'd like you to do here is to take a few minutes and practice these on your own. So take these numbers that are written in octal and I want you to use what you know about octal to convert them into our decimal number system. So pause the video, take a few minutes, practice them, and then once you are done, you can unpause the video and go check your answers on the next slide to confirm whether or not you have a good understanding of octal or not. So please take a minute here to check your answers. Make sure that you can accurately convert numbers from octal into decimal. And if you need any support, please make sure that you ask for help before moving on.